Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham Rakaha Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh Bahasham Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well, and peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 18. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. And this is a future prophecy speaking about when the true children of Israel, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, are back in the Holy Land. Violence would no more be heard of in the Holy Land, and there would especially be no more violence committed against the children of Israel. But if you've been paying attention to the news over the past week, you can clearly see that this prophecy hasn't taken place. You've had tensions between the Israelis over there and the Palestinian Arabs, who are actually Ishmaelites, with people on both sides getting killed between military exchanges between the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Force, and Hamas. And the reason that's happening is because those people over there calling themselves the children of Israel aren't the true children of Israel. They're Amalekite Edomites. And violence is going to continue in that land until they're taken out of the land and the true children of Israel are back in the land. And I went into this precept first to preface a video on the Elder Yashuwamba of the Dallas Camps page, Remnant Saved 144, titled Israel War 2021 Biblical Signs. And it was originally from a YouTuber named Jason A's page, just to show that those Amalekite Edomites don't fit the prophecies of what the true children of Israel would be doing and going through when they were back in the Holy Land. And I did a video earlier this week on this topic, but tensions have escalated so much that I thought I'd do an update to it. And not only would there be no more violence in the Holy Land or violence against the children of Israel, the true children of Israel, when they were back in the land, but hey, these heathen nations would no longer learn war anymore, which, as we'll see from this video, is not the case. And also, you've got conflicts going on right now, and World War III hasn't even happened yet. This is Micah chapter 4. I'm going to read verses 1 to 3. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountains. And in the scriptures, mountains can be symbolic for power structures or governments. And this is talking about the kingdom of heaven being established, beginning with the elect of the nation of Israel, the 144,000 and the rest of the righteous 1/3. And it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations, many heathen nations shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh and to the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And you're clearly not seeing this going on with those Amalekite Edomites over in the land. People aren't wearing Shirley Temple curls or yarmulkes, speaking Yiddish, or reading after the Talmud. And hey, you've got kosher pork over there, and Tel Aviv is known as Pink City, and it's one of the pride capitals on the entire planet. And also, if those Amalekite Edomites were the people wouldn't have any problems with them doing what they're doing to those Palestinian Arabs. But you've got a lot of people across the planet coming up against and condemning what those Amalekite Edomites are doing to those Palestinian Arabs or Ishmaelites. Here's the point in verse 3. And he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Neither shall they learn war anymore. Israel War 2021 Biblical Signs. So let's see if people aren't learning war anymore from this clip. And also, since this video is originally from Jason A's YouTube channel, this is a disclaimer that I do not own any of the content in this video, or I do not stand to gain anything monetarily from this video. It's simply a fair use video that I'm using for educational purposes.
Well, tonight the fighting in the Middle East has taken an ominous turn. Israeli ground forces have now entered Gaza. That's a major escalation.
Can you just paint us a picture of how dire the situation is right now?
This is what we know so far. There are currently no IDF ground troops inside the Gaza Strip. The IDF air and ground forces are carrying out strikes on targets in the Gaza Strip. So, despite reports, we can tell you this morning that there is no ground offensive from Israel into Gaza so far. It's just gone 2 a.m. in Jerusalem.
Ali and I both been to Israel. It's a wonderful country, and one of the wonderful parts of it, obviously the people, but the fact that they can mix Israeli Arabs and also Israeli Jews together. I mean, there's the four quarters. I mean, it's a special place. And to have them warring on the streets like that and the gang warfare is...
But I was there last time that the violence escalated, and it was nothing like this. It was very different. It was rockets and all, but we weren't seeing these ground attacks and assaults.
Yeah, it feels like the same movie, but just slightly different.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו מתמודדים במערכה עם שתי חזיתות. החזית האחת, עזה. אמרתי שאנחנו נגבה מחיר כבד מאוד מהחמאס ומשאר ארגוני הטרור, ואנחנו עושים זאת ונמשיך לעשות זאת בעוצמה רבה. המילה האחרונה לא נאמרה, והמבצע הזה יימשך ככל שידבר.
Tonight, Israeli tanks and armored personnel carriers headed for the border with Gaza as Israeli military officials say they have begun a ground assault into the Palestinian enclave.
Despite reports, we can tell you this morning that there is no ground offensive from Israel into Gaza so far. It's just gone 2 a.m. in Jerusalem. We'll get as much up-to-date information as we can for you.
The thing is, we're in sort of a situation where we go through the cycle of warfare every few years. Hamas attacks, Israel reestablishes deterrence, and then we start all over in a little bit. It has been quieter, but we haven't had an all-out ground war since 2014, but there's been several major escalations since then.
I've been appalled by the media reporting, but honestly, Melanie, as you well know, this is not new. This happens every time there's a conflict involving Israel. I can't quite understand it. I don't know whether it's victim politics, whether it's exaggerated anti-racism turned into anti-Jewish feeling. I don't know what it is.
We haven't heard much from the Middle East, have we, recently? Hasn't it been fairly peaceful?
No.
No?
It's just that we haven't been covering it very much.
Right.
No, we've had other worries to think about, but it still remains very volatile.
This was already the heaviest fighting between Israel and Palestinians in years.
Israeli airstrikes pounding the Gaza Strip since dawn. 2 million residents fenced in with nowhere to hide.
We were really heading towards a catastrophe.
Sirens fill the night sky over Tel Aviv. From their rooftops, terrified residents watch the missiles descend on their city.
The worst violence in 7 years between Israel and Hamas militants is intensifying tonight.
The United Nations Middle East envoy warning hostilities are moving towards a full-scale war.
If they want to escalate, the resistance is ready. If they want to stop, the resistance is ready. If they want to move their hand out of Jerusalem, the resistance is ready. This is the message that we delivered to all the sides. and to whoever is involved.
But miles to the north, this renewed conflict and the history behind it has spawned something else. This is Bat Yam near Tel Aviv. Israeli Jews attacking Arabs. In cities across the country, there are riots between the two sides. In Lod, between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the Arab community were protecting the mosque into the evening.
And late tonight, the violence spilling into the Israeli streets. A Jewish mob attacking an Arab driver. Brutal scenes tonight, and we are seeing those violent mobs on both sides in multiple Israeli cities, and that's what makes this round of violence different and even more alarming.
Palestinian Israelis and Jewish Israelis living in close proximity, turning on each other. And closer to Tel Aviv, Palestinian businesses were ransacked. The wave of violence has hit dozens of cities and regions across Israel. It's the worst between communities living alongside each other in decades. Israeli officials say they are more violent than the protests that led to the Al-Aqsa Intifada in 2000.
More than 60 Palestinians have been killed, including 16 children. This is a crime, this man says. They were civilians. It's the worst violence in 7 years.
Hamas has launched over 1,600 rockets towards Israel the past few days.
Or more than 1,000 rockets overnight, last night, which is quite unprecedented and extraordinary.
The air raid sirens sounded through the day. In the skies, the trails of Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. It shot down most of the Hamas rockets. The Israeli communities here are used to attacks from Gaza, but not this many in just a few hours.
This is the third time it's happened since we've been here. Miss Omar, in one of her statements about these very events, she said, Israel airstrikes killing civilians in Gaza is an act of terrorism. Palestinians deserve protection. Unlike Israel, missile defense programs such as Iron Dome don't exist to protect Palestinian civilians. It's unconscionable to not condemn these attacks.
Listen and look at those pictures. You are looking at Israeli missiles exploding in Gaza overnight.
Isaiah 60 verse 18, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. Middle East violence intensifies, children among the dozens dead as Hamas, Israel exchange rockets.
And people on both sides of the conflict, I have to say this, are very passionate in the support for their group. Very passionate. But I actually want to look past that, as that's what a lot of people right now are doing today. They're trying to obviously back up the side that they belong on.
The deadly fighting follows weeks of near-nightly protests over forced evictions in East Jerusalem.
Do you accept what UN organizations, what human rights organizations are saying? You are an occupying power that is violating international law.
I can see that you've gathered and put together all the quotes. The point is you and people...
Listen to this little exchange right here.
People have to understand and realize you're not talking and interviewing me in 1967. We're talking about 2021.
Sir, I've quoted to you quotes from Rupert Colville in May the 7th, 2021, and I have done my research, and I make no apology for it. These need to be addressed.
That's okay, I understand that.
Are you saying to viewers, the UN, UNESCO, Amnesty International, I've got a quote here if you want to hear it, where they say settling civilians in occupied territories violates international humanitarian law and amounts to a war crime. Are you telling viewers the UN, the International Court of Justice, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch are all wrong and only you are right?
I'm saying... No, what I'm saying is that Jerusalem is not occupied.
Hang on, so you said no. If they're not wrong, then you admit that you are an occupying power that is violating international law by your intervention.
The target says the Israeli...
If those Amalekite Edomites were the true children of Israel, then you wouldn't have seen that exchange or these different organizations talking bad against those Amalekite Edomites and their occupation of that territory and how they're treating those Palestinian Arabs. They'd agree with everything they were doing. As it says back in Micah chapter 4, verse 2, and many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, into the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. If those Amalekite Edomites were the true children of Israel, you wouldn't have the UN, the International Criminal Court, or Human Rights Watch going against their practices against those Palestinian Arabs or Ishmaelites over there. And also, you so-called Palestinian Arabs or Ishmaelites, you don't belong in the land either. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And like I said earlier, you don't have the majority of people on this planet following after the ways of those Amalekite Edomites, and you've got all kinds of abominations going on over in the land of Israel that have nothing to do with the laws of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, like kosher pork and Tel Aviv being Pink City. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. As you can clearly see, hey, these Amalekite Edomites and these Edomites and their rulership in general is almost done. So like we always tell you, Akim, hey, you should have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure and be saved from these coming calamities of Jacob's trouble and be the first fruits in the kingdom of heaven of that elect number. So as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.